Yo, 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 what's good? What's good? Episode 3 of Loud with Zach and Rob. Unfortunately, my man Zach is not here, so my good friend Ben McKee is here filling in for him. I'm going to let him tell you who he is, where he's from, all the other good stuff. And today we're going to be talking about some NBA basketball, talking about some college football, college baseball, man. We're gonna hit it all in a circle, get y'all some good notes, good nuggets, good news, man. And yeah, so Ben, welcome, my brother, to the show. Thank you for joining us, my kind friend.
Rob, my guy, appreciate you having me. Hope you're well.
Of course, man. Of course, man. Yeah, tell us a little bit about you, man. Who you are, where you from, all the other good stuff.
All the good stuff that people just love to hear about, right? No, I'm Ben McKee, GoVols247.com. Appreciate you having me on. Folks can follow me on Twitter at Ben McKee14. That's the Instagram handle too. 14 is the lucky number, so got to throw that into the handles. But I'm just little old me, little old Ben.
Nah,
I'm not big shot.
Now.
Big,
Nah, you big man now.
Yeah, I'm trying to catch up to you, big shot Rob.
Man, I'm trying to get like you, man. I'm trying to get like you. Nah, man, but seriously, thank you. Thank you for coming on, man. Zach is moving, all this other stuff, so I appreciate you filling in, man, because had to get another episode out, man. Been gone for a minute, been busy, been traveling, been all over the place. I've been trying to get you on for a minute too, man, but we in the middle of baseball season, so it's going to be tough for you anytime. So I'm thankful that we found the time to finally get one on, man. Ball fans will absolutely love this. Also, congrats. The Swain event will be back in the mornings. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, at least on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I wish it was back full time, 3 hours a day. But hey, 2 hours a week is better than 0 hours
Absolutely.
A week is the way that I look at it. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So Tuesdays and Thursdays on all the different Swain event channels from 8 a.m. Eastern to 9 a.m. So it'll be fun. It'll be interesting. Swain loves to talk. I love to talk. Folks love to call in. So I'm sure the hour will feel like 5 minutes.
Man, it's gonna fly.
It is. I'm actually really interested to see how that works out. How that dynamic works out. I'm gonna have to work on trimming my answers because Lord knows I love to talk. Swain and I both. Which can be a blessing and a curse. So that'll be fun. Excited to get back interacting with all the Swain event fam and Vol fans everywhere. That's what makes that show so unique. And not just myself. There were many before me: Seth Stokes, Charlie Burris, Brad Matthews, Daniel Lewis. Trying to make sure I don't forget anybody. I believe that's everybody. Wes Rucker way back in the day, back when I think they called it
way back when.
Swain and Rucker is what I think they called that show. So it's the Swain event itself since Tennessee, since Swain went independent. I guess prior to 15 or 16 it became really unique because of the following and the interactions and the love. And dedication from everybody listening. The folks listening is what made the show so great. Swain and I were just chopping it up behind a microphone, just like anybody else, and so many people do all across America now.
Absolutely.
With how technology has advanced. But what made that special was the dynamic between Swain and the listeners, and just really, really unique and something that you can't replicate. So glad to have that back. Going twice a week. 2 hours is better than no hours, like I said. So I'll take it, and I'm excited for it.
Oh, man, trust me. We're all ready, man. It's been a long time coming, man. When that news broke, that y'all not splitting up, but, just, taking, your different routes for a minute, man. It shook everybody up, man. But super glad y'all are back, man, and can't wait. Look forward to it, man. But, hey, let's hop in. First thing first. Ben is a huge Memphis Grizzlies fan. How did you take that series, man?
If the folks who are watching can't see behind me, I may have to change my bottom one, the one below the Jaws special. I got the 2 Slam magazine covers up, and the one on the bottom features Dylan Brooks. I may have to switch that one up, which is really disappointing because the cover of it goes hard. I mean, it's as good of a cover on a magazine, especially for Slam. I know all the Slam covers are dope as all get out, but that one especially is really hard. At least it was back in the day when we thought that Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bain and Ja and Mr. Brooks was going to be quite the not trio, but I guess foursome.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word. And I've also got the T-shirt with that cover on it as well. So I'm not gonna get rid of it. It's too cool. I thought back at the time, like I wondered why are they including Dylan Brooks? I mean, at that time I didn't dislike Dylan Brooks the way that I do now. Right. But I knew even then, like, he wasn't on the same level as the other three. Like the future was the trio. But Ja is super loyal to a fault, as we saw this calendar year, and I guess he was partying with you because he was in your neck of the woods. I must have been with you. You must have been the one that got him in trouble. But
he was out here in Colorado doing his thing.
He was definitely doing his thing out there in Colorado. But no, it was a disappointing end to the season. It was a fun season. It was a good basketball team with a very bitter ending for so many reasons. Just all the off-court stuff with Ja, although that seemed to turn a corner in a positive way. Definitely. Seems like he's taking responsibility and does truly, genuinely want to get better. Mm-hmm. And then all the Dylan Brooks stuff in the playoffs. It was a young, immature bunch, and hopefully they can grow and learn from it. And also it didn't help that Steven Adams was hurt and Brandon Clark. I mean, Anthony Davis is out there playing volleyball just because the Grizzlies did not have anybody in the post to bang with him, and they didn't because Steven Adams, the best rebounder in the league, was hurt, and Brandon Clark, who has as much springs as anybody, was hurt as well. So that was unfortunate, but it is what it is. Fun season and still a bright future if they can have a nice off season here.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jackson held his own for what he could do. You know what I mean? When AD's playing at a high level that everyone knows he can play at every single night, it's really hard to stop him. It's really hard to stop him. AD just has to find consistency and stay healthy. And when he does those two things, as you can see, the Lakers are a hard team to beat, man. I think Brooks, to be completely honest with you, I don't really hate Brooks. I don't. I like players who don't mind being the villain. Like Draymond Green doesn't mind being the villain. But the difference between Draymond Green and Brooks is Draymond Green got, 4 rings? You know what I'm saying? Dylan Brooks, you don't have any rings, man. So you got to get some credit before you start coming at LeBron out of all people. If this was like, say, another superstar, I'm like Damian Lillard or something, okay. But LeBron, like, that's not the bear you want to poke, man. So, but he'll learn from it. I hope.
We'll see if he learns from it. We'll see if he learns from it because you're spot on. Like I dislike him for other reasons. Like I don't mind somebody talking a little bit of trash like that. That's fun, right? It's all part of the game, so to speak. Absolutely. Especially this new era of sports. I do. And this is a separate conversation. I feel like we've gotten too far away from sportsmanship, and that should still matter in sports, but it seems to not matter in different circles. But again, that's a whole different conversation. But like, I don't have a problem with Dylan Brooks running his mouth, but don't run your mouth when you're not that guy. You're not him. You're not him. You are a really good defender, and you're pretty good at attacking the basket. Mm-hmm. You're good in the mid-range with pull-up jumpers or contested shots, floaters in the paint or whatever. But he thinks that he's LeBron James. There's a famous quote back when like Jaren and Ja were in their first 2 years, and he was comparing them to the big three. Like they were Bosh, D Wade, and LeBron, and he said that when he gets going, he's like LeBron. It's like, no, you're not. Like, you can be a really good NBA player, but not if you continue to try to be somebody that you're not. And
definitely,
literally nobody took more shots in the NBA this season and made fewer of them than Dylan Brooks. You can't shoot, so why do you continue to jack up all these shots? And it just wasn't this playoffs. I mean, this is 2, 3, 4 seasons now in which he shot the Grizzlies out of games. He's the oldest guy on the team, shows no leadership, and leads them in the wrong direction, as we saw this year. And he's not the basketball player that he thinks that he is. That's frustrating, and he kills the Grizzlies more often than not. When he stays within himself, he's actually a pretty good basketball player and does a lot of great things. But then also, like, the whole mouthing, like, again, I don't care if you run your mouth, but if you're unable to back it up on the court, don't run from people, don't run from the post game, don't dip out on doing media and then blame the media for causing the conversations that are being had, because obviously the media is talking about your comments, but you're the one who made the comments and are saying egregious things. It's not like they're taking some small little comment and turning it into something that it's not. You called LeBron old and was saying that you poke bears and just saying all of these absurd things.
I don't respect no one till they give me 40. What?
Right, which is that's like, bro, like what about 30? Like in the league, heck,
Yeah.
I mean, somebody gives him 20, and then it's like the numbers, like Xavier Tillman was better at defending LeBron in the series than Dillon, and then he just dips out on the media post game. I mean, that's just a cowardly move. So don't run your mouth as much as you do, and then not show up and then blame others. Just the lack of ability to the self accountability is the phrase that I was looking for. Like it's just the lack of self awareness. It is just MIA. So that's why he's so frustrating for me. He's got to go this offseason, which it already appears that the Grizzlies aren't going to re-sign him. So
which I don't blame him. I mean, the thing that got me was LeBron's he wasn't even playing that great in the series. He wasn't playing that great, and for some odd reason, you start talking, and now he turns
poke the bear.
Like whatever, man. But
let LeBron. LeBron is still a really good NBA player, but he's not LeBron James that we've come to know, because he's older. He has evolved. And I mean, I don't really know why he wants to just hang out along the 3-point line every single game for 40 minutes. I guess he's preserving energy and whatnot because his body is older. Yeah. But that's all LeBron wanted to do that entire series, was hang out on the 3-point line and let Anthony Davis work. And when Dillon Brooks goes and runs his mouth, that literally poked the bear, and LeBron started attacking the rim, driving to the basket.
Team play better. You got Hachimura putting up 20-plus points.
Looking like Michael Jordan.
Putting up what? Reeves put up like 14 or 15 in the fourth quarter in game one. Like, man.
You literally
put confidence into the whole team.
Yep. You unnecessarily poked the bear. Like they were kind of laid back, just chilling, and you were already going back to LA. You knew that was going to be a hostile environment. And then you had those comments to put the players on the Lakers. Now they're all ready to go and aggressive and locked in. And you put all this added pressure on a young and immature basketball team that wasn't ready to handle it. So I can't stand the guy. I've never disliked somebody on my favorite team more than Dillon Brooks. I can't stand him. And I don't know what NBA team would want Dillon Brooks. Like, it's absurd to me. Like, again, I think he can be a nice, solid little player if he stays within himself. But he doesn't. The Warriors would be dumb. The Warriors would be dumb. He needs to be playing overseas.
They got Draymond, and they love that about Draymond. They love that about him.
They do, but Dillon doesn't handle it the way that Draymond does. Like, Draymond at least knows how to, like,
maybe Draymond can teach him. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe so. To me, he's a lost cause in my opinion. And I think any of the 28 teams in the NBA, 30 teams, any team in the league would be
32 or something like that.
Yeah, however many teams, any team. I don't care if you're the Houston Rockets, the worst team in the league, or the best team in the league. Whoever wins the ship this year, or a team trying to get over the hump. Like, I think any team, the GM that signs Dillon Brooks should be fired immediately. And if I was a fan of that team, I'd go boycott outside the arena or something. He's truly a bum, is what he is.
I don't blame you, because I mean, technically you're right. You know, round two, man. Who you got? You got the Warriors or the Celtics? I said the Celtics. Jesus, the Warriors or the Lakers? I'm gonna go ahead and pick the Lakers, man, simply because I know for a fact that, for one, the way Anthony Davis is playing right now, they're gonna be really hard to beat. Two, Looney cannot guard Anthony Davis. He just can't. Really, no one can. They don't have anyone on the team that can guard Anthony Davis. And if LeBron gets it going, and then you got the bench going, it's just going to be hard to beat them, man. I do think the Warriors can do it. But the only way the Warriors can do it, in my opinion, is if they hit 33s a night. Because they hit so many threes in game one, and they still lost. People want to talk about the free throw deficiency. Oh, my God, they shot 40 free throws. Well, here's what you got to understand. The Warriors is a three-point shooting team. They want to shoot threes all day long. They want to shoot jump shots all day long. And every time they drove to the basket, AD or LeBron was smacking it out of bounds. Or they were contesting the shot and then missing shots at the rim. Like, it is very when the Lakers are 100% healthy, they're probably the best defensive team in the league, if I'm being honest with you. A lot of people don't want to admit that, but the facts are the facts. Statistically, you can look at it. When they're healthy, they're a hard team to beat, man. And you're not going to out rebound the Lakers, and you're not going to drive the basket on the Lakers. So the Warriors are going to have a very, very hard time beating this Lakers team if they don't figure it out.
I'm with you, and honestly, I've been wrong. I thought kind of going into the series that the Warriors would beat the Lakers just because. I mean, I don't think the Lakers are as bad as they started out the season, but I don't think that they're very good, if I'm being quite honest. I still don't think that they're very good. I don't think the Warriors are vintage Warriors, so I think that's making maybe the Lakers look a little bit better than they actually are. Because if you think about it, and if I'm a Lakers fan, I'm laughing at Ben McKee right now because they are playing much better, and it's not because LeBron or AD. It's because the Lakers went out and got Jared Vanderbilt and Rui Hachimura and upgraded the bench. That's the biggest difference, and why it's asinine that Patrick Beverley and Russell Westbrook think that they deserve a ring if the Lakers win a championship.
Westbrook, maybe. Westbrook,
no.
Maybe Westbrook. Patrick,
maybe.
Absolutely not. Not
but,
even.
Yeah, but the Lakers with Westbrook were just absolute trash, and he was part of the reason.
I don't know why though. Like he went to the Clippers and immediately started hooping. Like I want to know where was the disconnect. Now I know LeBron he's not a ball hog, but he's a ball dominant player.
Right.
And so is Russell Westbrook. But the way LeBron's been playing this season, he's been sitting back, letting everybody do their thing. So I don't understand how they didn't work because LeBron was on the outside. Westbrook, do your thing, pass it when you need to. What do we need to? Other than that, go get your buckets, man. That's exactly what he did on the Clippers. So I really wonder what was going on, man. I do.
I don't. I mean, I'm sure there was stuff going on in the locker room, but I just don't think it was a good schematic fit because with AD, I mean, he's anchoring the paint and kind of clogging up the paint, and Westbrook to succeed needs to be able to get into the paint, and that's why you've seen them offload Westbrook and add the Beasleys and all those other guys that we mentioned, and it spaces the floor better, and Westbrook doesn't have that in the way with the Clippers because you got Kawhi doing his thing, you got Paul George doing his thing, but I don't really think that the Lakers they're not a bad team, but I also don't think that they're like a championship level team like everybody's making them out to be. I think the Nuggets are going to beat either of the two. I know Denver and Phoenix are tied at 2-2 right now. I would think that Denver ends up winning that series. Maybe if Phoenix were able to win it, then we'll see if they can knock off the Suns, the Lakers, or the Warriors. But I think Denver's the best overall team that's remaining in the West. Definitely. So, and I think it'd be very disappointing if they're not able to get past Phoenix and at least get to the conference finals at minimum. But, I mean, think about it. The Lakers, to get to the point to where they are now, it took the Timberwolves in the play-in game not scoring the final 6 minutes of the game, and Karl Anthony Towns being Karl Anthony Towns in clutch situations. Like, it took that for them to play Memphis, and then everything that we talked about with Memphis, the injuries, the Dillon Brooks stuff, and like Ja wasn't good, Desmond wasn't good because they weren't able to space the floor because Dillon wasn't knocking down shots, and you saw them win in Game 5 because Luke Kennard could space the floor and open things up for Desmond Bane and Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr.
Over 40%, like
right, and then you take Kennard out, along with Brandon Clark and Steven Adams and Dillon Brooks not playing well. And there was no room to operate because you had to rely on Dillon Brooks. So, like, it took 6 games to beat a dysfunctional Grizzlies team with a million issues. And now I think they're taking advantage of a Warriors team that is not what we're used to seeing. And I think the difference is the Warriors supporting cast isn't being as productive as the Lakers supporting cast. And look, to the Lakers' credit, I mean, that's what wins you championships. You need your star players to be star players, but you got to have the bench to go with it, and the Lakers' bench has been awesome. So I kind of thought that the Warriors and Kings were both better than the Lakers, and the Warriors would probably win in 6, to be honest with you. But so far, I've been completely wrong about that. You can't really count out the Warriors until the fat lady sings. We learned that last series. And I hate the Warriors as a Grizzlies fan, especially with the budding rivalry that we've had between the two teams. But I love Steph Curry. I can't stand Draymond and the rest of them, but I love Steph Curry. He's one of my all-time favorite athletes. I don't know how you could not like Steph Curry and everything he's about on and off the court, and the way that he plays the game and kind of does it in an untraditional manner and has changed the game with the way that he shoots the ball, and best shooter of all time. Without a doubt.
No debate.
Without a doubt. So I kind of hope the Warriors come back and knock off the Lakers. And I wouldn't be surprised if it happens, but so far I've been wrong on that. So and I think it's Steph. What's that?
It's gonna have to be Steph if they do it, man. My thing with Denver is so Jokic is, when I say really bad at the pick and roll defense, which is what the Lakers love to do with AD and LeBron. When I say he's really bad, he is absolutely the worst 7-footer I have ever seen on pick and roll defense. Anthony Davis is about, if they win the series, Anthony Davis is going to expose Jokic in the worst way possible, because literally AD is going to get a dunk or a layup every single time because their pick and roll defense is so bad. It's so bad. And if LeBron has it going and they got shooters hitting from the outside, it's going to be hard for Denver to beat them. Denver hang around, yeah, but at the end of the day, if you can't stop a team that loves to play inside out, which is what the Lakers love to do, it's going to be very hard to win. Like I said, the Warriors, game 1, hit so many threes and still lost. Granted, free throws, yes, but at the end of the day, a team that loves to play inside out, it's hard to beat them if you can't stop them in the paint. And then when you drive to the paint on the Lakers, it's going to be a contested shot. It's going to be a block. Like last night, he had 50. DeAndre Ayton wasn't even trying to guard Joker last night.
I can't stand DeAndre Ayton.
He wasn't even trying, bro. AD, that's not about to happen with AD. It's not going to happen. You know what I'm saying? So I think the Nuggets should get all the way to the finals. And honestly, they should win because they're probably going to end up playing the Celtics or even the 76ers. Who knows? But it's really, really hard to guard Jokic. It's very hard to guard Jokic. And Embiid has been ducking Jokic for a long time. He's been ducking him. He will not play at Denver. I don't know why, but he will not play at Denver. But we really know why. I'm not going to say that, but we know why. We know why.
Right now, Embiid needs to worry about Al Horford because Al Horford's been giving him the business. So the playoffs.
They got lucky yesterday. They got lucky.
They did. They did. I don't know. Sixers and Celtics is an interesting series. There's a lot of players. I don't typically like Philadelphia sports teams or especially Boston sports teams. You know I'm a diehard Yankees fan, so I absolutely hate the Boston Red Sox. And then growing up a Peyton Manning fan, you were taught to hate the Patriots and Tom Brady as well, and we know how ruthless and how big of an a-hole Boston sports fans are as well. But I mean, I love Tatum. I love Jaylen Brown. VFL Grant Williams is on the team. I kind of like Al Horford. Like they have a bunch of likable players, and same with Philly. Like I love Joel Embiid. The one that I don't like on the Sixers, I love DeAnthony Melton. He was with the Grizzlies last year. Yep. Tobias Harris, VFL. I love PJ Tucker. I can't stand James Harden. I've never liked James Harden. I just love James Harden. He showed up last night when they absolutely needed him to knock down that big shot. But that's not normally what he does. Normally, when it matters most, he does not show up because he cares about things off the floor more than on the floor, which is why I've never really cared for him. And I don't really like his game. Doesn't really fit what I like to watch. The flopping and the traveling and the going to the free throw line 40 times in a game because you're flopping all over the floor like a fish. That's just not me. I'd rather watch Steph Curry do what he does.
100%.
10 times out of 10. But kudos to James Harden. He showed up. So that's been a fun series. And
surprisingly, Game 1 and yesterday,
he didn't look like
2015 James Harden. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I know.
He looked real good. He looked real good.
And who knows? Embiid's hurt. That may be affecting him more than we realized. But it looked like there for a minute Celtics were just going to wipe the floor with them this series. And now that's turned into a real entertaining one. And big game for Lakers Warriors tonight. And then last night, I thought the Nuggets were going to wipe the floor with Phoenix, the way that series started off. But, man, Devin Booker is unconscious right now. And I've never really been a big Devin Booker guy. But he's kind of starting to turn the corner in terms of likability for me with the way – I mean, he's just a pure bucket getter. And I mean, the way he's been putting the ball in the basket at literally every way possible, all over the floor, mid range, contested, 3-pointers, at the rim, fadeaways. I mean, you name it, he's doing it at like a super high level. So that's
What's
been cool to
crazy
watch.
about that, bro?
What's that?
During the face-off today on Josh and Swain, Josh Ward had the nerve to fix his lips and say AD is playing better than Devin Booker. No, what? I was like, bro, there's no way you just said that right there. There's no way you just said that, bro. Anthony Davis had 11 points in game 2. 11 points. Nobody
is playing better than Devin Booker in the playoffs right now. Nobody.
Bro.
And like it, and it's been a great playoffs. I mean, even last night, I mean, KD was going off. I've always liked KD.
Yeah.
I like Jokic. I kind of like being a Grizzlies fan and small market and star players in small markets and sticking around. I have an appreciation for the Jokic's and the Dame Lillards and the Giannis Antetokounmpos. So Jokic was putting the ball in the basket last night too. So it's been really entertaining. I mean, we haven't even mentioned the Knicks. I mean, normally people hate the Knicks, but I think it's been kind of cool to watch the Garden going crazy and the Knicks playing well with Jalen Brunson, Jimmy Butler going off. Like it's been a really fun playoffs. I know the NBA isn't everybody's favorite, but if you are an NBA fan,
76ers feel right now.
Letting Jimmy Butler go.
Just imagine how they feel right now, bro.
We won't mention that though. No, people who follow Tennessee, we won't mention that since they the fact that they chose Tobias Harris's contract over Jimmy Butler is quite the topic in the NBA and quite the start of a joking conversation.
I ain't touching that with my enemies poll. Nope.
Tobias has played well this series too, doing what he needs to do.
He's played well. But when you're on that type of contract, you got to be putting up 20, 25 points a game, man. You're not wrong.
You're not wrong. I also don't think people realize, though, like, it was more of an NBA just having a ton of money than a Tobias Harris thing. Like, so many players have more money than you think that they would be worth. And it's not like teams being stupid. I know technically the Sixers chose him in a way over Butler, but, like, there's been that much money to go around. It wasn't like a Tobias Harris thing. Like a couple years ago, Mike Conley signed the richest contract in NBA history or whatever it was when he re-signed with the Grizzlies, and you would think Mike Conley, but it's because of the new era with the TV deals and all the money that the NBA is getting, and that's why. Right, you got money to give, and that's why Tobias Harris got the money that he got, along with a lot of other people.
Kudos to his dad too. His dad got him that contract. So hey, kudos to his dad, man. His dad came in and put his foot down and said, "You're gonna pay my son." So hey, I respect it. I love Tobias Harris, man. I love him. You know, great basketball player. You know, I ain't gonna say he's struggling. I think he's just more of a role player on a big contract. So it looks bad on him when he has bad nights and he doesn't have, 20, 25 points, 12, 15 rebounds, whatever the case may be. It looks bad because of the money he makes. I think if he didn't have this huge contract, people wouldn't be on him the way that they are. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I completely agree. 1, he's still in the NBA. 2, he's still in the NBA. And then 3, you can follow that up with 1 and 2. He's still in the NBA.
And 4, he's good. He's good. He's a good NBA player. He's just not great. You hit the nail on the head. He's not as good as his contract says. But the NBA has a lot of money to give because of these TV deals, and he benefited from that. And like you said, he's in the NBA and he's playing well. He's just not one of those. Right.
He literally starts
on a great team.
Number 2 seed, 3 seed, 4 seed, whatever they are, 4 seed team. Like, he's a starter, man. You can't knock him, man. You can't knock him. People just have certain expectations. Now, when it comes to the professional level, I understand expectations are way up here, and that's very fair. It's very fair. But some players just aren't meant to do what fans think every player should do every night. You're not going to have 15 NBA players on both teams every night coming out getting 20, 30 points. It's just not realistic. Like, Tobias Harris he's not meant to take 20, 25 shots a game. That is James Harden's role, and that is Joel Embiid's role. He's not meant to take that many shots. You know what I'm saying? Like, people just don't understand the game sometimes, and that is okay. But if you don't know the game, save your comments because you sound really dumb sometimes, including Tennessee fans. Yes, I said it, including y'all. Yes, I can say it. Ben can't say it, but I can say it.
You're the ringleader.
Y'all need to chill sometimes, man. I will say, in the past, there's a couple times where, I would text a buddy and say something completely outrageous. But I'm texting a buddy. I'm not putting it on Twitter for everyone to see it. And then you got, one of the athletes putting it as their header on Twitter, like, oh, I seen what you said. Because these athletes see it or not. Whether people realize it or not, these athletes see all those comments, all the tweets. They see that and they use it as motivation. And sometimes mentally that can hurt the players. Fans don't understand that. Mentally playing any sport is rough on you when you have so many people. I played high school basketball. I played college basketball. And there was a lot of times where I had bad games and people are just wailing on me, and mentally that can get to you. But at a professional level, it's a different story, man. These dudes get death threats for not having a good game. And it's like, bro, like, we're all human. It's okay to have a bad game. As long as it's not consistently, I get it. But neither here nor there. People are going to say what they want to say, do what they want to do, feel how they want to feel, which is their right. They're entitled to it. But sometimes it's just too much, man. Fans do too much sometimes, man. And I hate it. It bothers me so much.
I feel you. It's annoying when it becomes over the top. And right, it's something that the athletes certainly see. Mm-hmm. I think it's real easy to say just put down your phone and don't pay attention to it. But I mean, you and I are both almost 30, if I'm not mistaken. So
I am 30. I turned 30 March the 31st. I did turn 30.
I forgot that you're so much older than me. I've still got 2.5 years to go before I get to good old 30. But I mean, it's easy for us to
feel 30 though.
Yeah, you're right about that. You're right about that. But I mean, it's easy for us to say we have a little bit different of a perspective, and not that we're like super old and experienced or whatever and have done a lot of life. You and I are still growing and learning in our own ways. But these are 17 to 23-year-old kids. I mean, and I don't want to like strictly classify them as a kid because they are a young adult in a lot of ways. Yeah. But they're also still a kid in a way, especially the freshman and sophomore. Like they're fresh out of high school. Yep. And I couldn't imagine dealing with all the pressure that they deal with when I was that age. It's a lot. And I mean, you saw it this year with the Tennessee basketball team. Say what you will about them and how good they were, this and that. That team felt like they were criticized more by their own people, their fans, than they should have. And they were. Were they disappointing at times? Absolutely. Were they frustrating? Absolutely. The inconsistencies were very frustrating. But to act like these guys should never pick up a basketball and just completely act like they're not worth anything because they had a bad basketball game at the age of 18, 20 years old. And I realize they have some old heads on their team. But a lot of those old heads, like a Josiah Jordan-James, was dealing with a lot of injuries. And it's hard to live up to expectations when you're dealing with all that. And to act like they were the 2020 Tennessee football team that was just absolute trash is just – it's absurd. I get it. You're passionate about your teams. I have my teams that I'm passionate about. I ranted and raved about Dylan Brooks to start this podcast. I mean, I could not stand Dylan Brooks. Yep. So I get it. Like it's part of your identity for the diehards, in a sense. So it's very frustrating because, and I'm that type of sports fan. Now that I've gotten older, it's not as much, but the outcome of my team and whether they win or not, it affects my day. If the Yankees lose tonight, like it's going to bother me for 5 to 10 minutes. When I was younger, a little bit longer, and now that I've gotten older and have a kid and more important responsibilities, it doesn't impact me as long, but it still bothers me for a couple minutes right after they lose. So like I get it. The frustration because of how passionate and emotionally tied we are to our teams. But, man, some of just the constant bickering and hateful tones on message boards, on social media.
Every tweet you have about any sport at Tennessee that results in a loss or something that wasn't, to their liking, your mentions are blown up with such negative comments. Man.
I don't even read them. I do not read my mentions. I've gotten in the habit now. I don't read them whether they're positive or negative. And I kind of hate that because I do have people who have been following me not that I'm some Stephen A. Smith or anything, but have been following me since I was a student journalist when I first started out with Swain. Right. And like they will tweet at me and be like, hey, did you see this? Or, hey, I mean, whatever, like something nice. And like, I don't really see it anymore because I don't read my mentions. It is emotionally draining to read through the messages when Tennessee loses in football, basketball, baseball. Yeah. Like it's very frustrating. And I just avoid that that altogether because it can be it can be really, really draining because it's a lot of emotional people venting. And again, I just said that I get it, but it's going over the top. And like I can think of 3-4 people right now off the top of my head that they are all in my mentions. Or if I click on like one of my tweets and see a response or two, like I can think of like 3 to 4 people on Twitter who only respond when something negative happens. Yep. But when whatever Tennessee team it is, when Tennessee's winning, they're nowhere to be found in my mentions. And that just baffles me. And I realize that kind of negativity sells more than positivity, and negativity kind of stirs the pot a little bit more because it stirs up more emotions. But like I said, I can think of multiple people off the top of my head right now that I periodically see in my mentions when things are not going well for Tennessee, and when things are going well for Tennessee, don't hear a thing from them, and that just baffles me as a sports fan. That you would rather speak up when things aren't going well than be excited when things are going well. It's almost like they're disappointed that they can't complain and vent on social media because they are winning.
Exactly. So I'm glad you kind of said that because you being, having your show, your podcast and all that, sometimes you can't really say what all you should say because, as your job, you have to stay professional. So I'm going to ask you some questions, but I know it's on the professional side. I want to ask, what would you say? What would you do basically in these situations? So I'm going to hit a couple sports. Tennessee basketball. So just picked up 2 huge transfers and 3 huge transfers in transfer portal. Got you some shooters, got you some scorers. All right. So question, what do you think the problem is when you have these prolific scorers at other schools and they come to Tennessee? This one we're talking about basketball. You got prolific scorers coming in, transferring to Tennessee basketball, and their points drop tremendously. What's the disconnect? What do you think it is? What's the problem? Because, Tyreek Key was averaging 17 points at Indiana State. Now, I understand he was playing point guard. That's not his natural position. He's a bona fide scorer. You know what I mean? A few years ago, you had E.J. Anasicki, but still, he was putting up big numbers, double-doubles where he was. You know what I mean? But it's kind of a little bit a trend of prolific scorers coming to Tennessee and their production just drops. What do you think it is? Like, what's going on? Where's the disconnect between, Barnes and whoever it is that transferred in? What's the problem there?
Well, first off, I know you mentioned Tyreek Key, and I'll touch on Tyreek Key separately. I don't think Tennessee's really brought in prolific transfers in basketball. They to me, they have not brought in a Brew McCoy, or a Hendon Hooker, or a guy like that. To me, because and I think that this transfer cycle, I think Rick has realized that he does need to adjust the way he attacks the transfer portal. I think the last couple of years, as transfers have become more and more a part of the sport, not just the sport, but college athletics in general, every single sport in college athletics, I think he was more focused on building his team the traditional way and then filling in the holes here and there, like filling in the bench and the depth to go along with the Josiah Jordan James and the Santiago Vescovis and the Olivier Cumwa. So I don't think that Rick Barnes has taken advantage of the transfer portal. And is that the right or wrong thing to do? I don't know. I kind of like the thought process of developing your own guys, signing them out of high school. I think you build a better locker room and a better culture by doing it the traditional way. I think that you can risk a lot when you bring in a ton of transfers. I think that's kind of a Tennessee baseball problem this year. I don't think that any of the transfers are issues necessarily, but you look at kind of the veterans on the roster. and it's Maui Ahuna, a transfer, Griffin Merritt, a transfer, Zane Denton, a transfer. Like, I don't know that you can necessarily just have leadership right away by doing that. And I'm not trying to simplify Tennessee baseball's issues by simply saying that. There's a lot of other things that go into that conversation. Definitely. And I'm not saying that the team has bad leadership, but it's definitely not the leadership that it has been the last 2 years. And what you had the last 2 years with Tennessee baseball, you had guys who Tony Vitello recruited, signed, and developed. And like, you still obviously have a bunch of that on the roster, but a lot of it is young. Christian Moore, true sophomore. Blake Burke, true sophomore. Chase Burns, Drew Beam, true sophomores. And like, you do have your Christian Scotts who have been around for a while, but Christian Scott that's not his personality, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. And he's been a better leader, but he's more of a lead by example kind of guy. Mm-hmm. You want a million Christian Scotts. Like, Christian Scott is the type of guy that you want your daughter dating. He's awesome. But he's not Evan Russell, Drew Gilbert. He's just not super boisterous, and that's fine. So I kind of, going back to Tennessee basketball, I kind of like that Rick had that thought process of wanting to build the roster the traditional way, and then fill in here and there with transfer pieces. Going back to the year that they had their first breakout season when they won the SEC in 2018 and 2019. You're kind of young at the point guard position with Jordan Bone, Lamonte Turner. They go out and get James Daniel from Howard, I think it was, and kind of a veteran guy. That was a nice depth piece, not a star player, but a nice depth piece to help.
He was a bona fide scorer, though, before he came to Tennessee.
He was. And that I was also going to say, like, you got to remember, like, he's coming from Howard. EJ Anosike was coming from UC San Diego, one of those.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Like, it's a different level. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's very similar, not exactly the same, obviously, but it's like going from high school to SEC ball. Like, you're not going to average 20, 30 points and then go do the same thing in the SEC. Like, you're not doing that. Yeah. You got to remember, there's a reason that these guys ended up at those schools in the first place.
Absolutely.
And didn't come to the SEC. And sure, like, misevaluations happen. Guys end up elsewhere for whatever reason. Like Dalton Knecht. Now, I'll get into him in a minute. I think he's a little bit of a different story. Like, he was at Northern Colorado and at JUCO because he was short coming out of high school. He hit a growth spurt from his junior to senior year of high school, and then continued to grow. He went to JUCO because he was short at like 6'2", and now he's 6'6", and that's why he ended up at Northern Colorado. Like, at that size, you're not going to play in the SEC. You're just not. So I do think he is a prolific scorer, and if he comes in and doesn't score the ball the way that we've seen him, and look, there will be an adjustment period. It's going to play in the SEC, right? Which I think is up there now because of the last couple of years with any conference of basketball.
Absolutely. 100%.
So I think Dalton Knecht is kind of that first prolific guy coming in. Maybe you could say Justin Powell coming from Auburn, but
bona fide knockdown shooter.
Yes,
man.
But I don't think that was a Rick Barnes issue. I think that was a Justin Powell issue. And like, you can criticize Rick for being too hard on his guys. I just don't think that Justin Powell fits that mold. He can't handle it like a Zakai Ziegler. And like, I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's a knock on Rick, and I don't think that's a knock on Justin Powell. It's just 100%. They weren't meant for each other, so to speak. And here's the other, like, I think Tennessee Washington State was his 5th school in 5 years, or 6th school in 6 years, something crazy like that, going back to high school. So, like, to me, I kind of look at the player and the people around the player in that instance. Like, why are you going to that many schools in literally every single season? And everybody likes to prop up Bruce Pearl. Like, he also transferred from Auburn and Bruce Pearl. So I think you could categorize him as a prolific talent. And Justin Powell had a good year at Washington State this year. I just don't think he was, this isn't a knock on Justin Powell. Again, it just didn't fit. I don't think he was a fit for Tennessee. And Tyreek Key, I think that he was kind of like an EJ Anosike and a James Daniel.
He showed what he had some games, though. He showed
He did.
He showed it.
I think his problem was what you mentioned. I think he is more of an off-ball scorer, which when we saw him at his best, that's what he was doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he was being forced to play the point guard because Tennessee essentially had one true point guard because they took B.J. Edwards when they probably should not have taken B.J. Edwards, as we've now seen him enter the transfer portal. And I think B.J. could have developed into a nice player at this level, but
I do.
Like I don't think that Tennessee basketball is in a position to be taking B.J. Edwards or Drew Pember or some of these other guys. The
Hanjay balling right now.
He is, but if you put him in the SEC, is he doing the same thing? So I think that, and there's, I mean, and Tennessee they just took 3 non-power 5 players. I guess in college basketball it's non-power 6. I like Dalton Connect. I think his game will translate because I think he ended up where he ended up because he was small coming out of high school. Yeah. I would be surprised if it doesn't pan out for him at Tennessee. He has a great offensive game. Now, he needs to improve on defense, so I'll be curious to see mentally how he handles that. Correct. But I think that's why he wanted to come because in order to get to the next level, he knows he needs to improve on that side of the floor. And like Chris Ledlam, like he shouldn't be viewed as somebody that's going to fix all of Tennessee's scoring issues because that's not what he is. He's a glue guy. He is a depth guy. He's like the first, second guy off the bench that is going to rebound the basketball, play tough defense, shoot the open shots when he has an open shot, keep the ball moving. Like he's a glue guy that you need. And I'm really curious to see about Jordan Gainey because he shot the ball really well as a freshman.
Really good shooter. Mm-hmm.
He didn't shoot it this past season all that well. I think it was like 30% or so. It wasn't that good compared, especially to his freshman year when he shot 50% from 3, which that's kind of crazy. That's probably a little more of a better shooting percentage than he actually has as a shooter, as an ability would say. But I think he's probably somewhere in the middle. And Tennessee needs more shooting, and they genuinely liked his game. They're not taking him just because his dad is an assistant coach. I'm sure that naturally helped. I mean, how could it not? But he didn't, like, he was hands off. Like, it was all Rick Barnes and Greg Polinsky that handled Jordan Gainey's shooting. Like, Rick really wanted little Gainey because he can shoot the basketball. So we'll see, but that's a long-winded way of answering your question of I don't think that they've brought in prolific players. Like they haven't brought in.
Now that you broke that down and explained it, that's right. A very
I think there's take. 2 that you could maybe point to, like Justin Powell and Tyreek Key. But Justin Powell, like I described, I just don't think he was a good fit at Tennessee. I don't blame Rick Barnes for that. I just don't. And then Tyreek Key, he's transferring from Indiana State to Tennessee. There's going to be a natural drop-off because there's a step up in competition. Mm-hmm. And then he had to be a primary ball handler. And I don't blame what I blame Rick for in that instance and the coaching staff. I don't blame them for trying to make him a primary ball handler because you needed one to go along with ZAC. I fought them for taking B.J. Edwards and not taking a more proven ball handler to where you had to force Tyreek to play probably out of position. So, I mean, those are the 2 most prolific transfers they brought in, unless I'm forgetting somebody off the top of my head. And, like, are they really that prolific? It's not like football or baseball where Tony Vitello and Josh Heupel have been bringing in prolific guys. And that's to me, it's been more of a philosophy thing from Rick than he's not recruiting transfers well. He's gone and gotten the transfers that he's wanted. For the most part.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that's where like you either fault him for his thought process with the portal or not. I kind of like I said earlier, I kind of like building the roster up from the high school ranks, and I think that's how you build a culture and truly build a program and then fill in the needs as you go. But I do think he's been more aggressive in the portal this cycle, as you saw him bring in 3. And I think they're all going to help. I really do.
I do too. And the unfortunate part is, realistically, it's going to be really, really hard to build from the ground up nowadays because of the transfer portal. It's going to be hard to do, So these coaches have a lot of pressure on them, man, and a lot of BS that they just have to deal with because you have to keep each and every athlete happy or they're going to bounce. You know what I'm saying? So kudos to these coaches, man, because I'm not sure I would be able to do it in this day and age. And to be completely honest with you, I was actually really surprised that Rick signed that extension because me personally, I didn't think Rick was going to, take word of that. I don't feel like Rick Barnes is the type of coach that wants to deal with those kind of players. But
he doesn't.
He don't
me.
have a choice.
But I think this offseason, if you're a Tennessee fan, you have to feel really optimistic about kind of his comments. He said multiple times that you either adjust or it's just not going to work out. Like, you have to adjust, and he's adjusted it, and like, he deserves the benefit of the doubt. You don't last over 40, 45 years in coaching without adjusting, because like, obviously right now, NIL, transfer portal, those are the two big conversations. But the last 40 years, I guarantee you he's dealt with things that were just as big at the time. So I agree with you, what you just said. Like, I'm kind of surprised. Not that he signed an extension, but I thought that this would drive him out of the game, quite frankly. Not because I knew like any inside information or anything. He loves coaching basketball. That's what he wants to do. And he loves developing Tobe Awaka and Jonas Adu and Zakai Ziegler. Like, that's his wheelhouse. He just loves to coach basketball and spend one-on-one time with players and developing them. And that's, I think, is still outweighing all the nonsense with the portal and with NIL. And I mean, and he's also established. Like, he doesn't have to cave for NIL demands, because he does a good job of recruiting out of high school, and he does a good job of identifying players like the ones I just mentioned, and Jemai Meshack and Santiago Vescovi. They're not NIL needy players, so to speak. They're not a former 5-star who goes into the office and demands 30 minutes of playing time and playing out on the perimeter and X amount of money. And Rick says, go tell your teammates that's what you want, and you're not going to earn what you get. And then he goes and plays for a 4-win basketball team this past season. Like Rick does. Rick's had a couple like that, but for the most part, he does a good job of identifying players that are more team focused than individual focused. Definitely. So I do think he kind of avoids those issues more than most coaches. But I do think, like I was saying, I think if you're a Tennessee fan, you have to be really optimistic about some of the comments that he's made, because it seems like he's adjusted his thinking on the portal and the NIL and realizes that he needs to take advantage of it. And at a place like Tennessee, you really can.
Yeah, you got the resources, you got the money. Like, there's nothing that you would want for at the University of Tennessee. And that's every single coach in every single sport. They got resources, money, everything. You know what I mean? There's nothing lacking. So it's really no excuse not to, win at a high level and everything at University of Tennessee, man. But hey, I'm excited for next season. I think Rick will finally sacrifice a little bit of defense for more offense. It's very obvious with his comments, the Big Orange Caravan and stuff. It's very obvious that he understands, like, all right, we're going to take a small step back on defense, not a big step, a small step back on defense, work on offense a little bit more. And that's all you can ask for. He basically admitted that, during his interviews. He basically admitted it. So
he did. And they've got some bucket getters coming in. We just spent a lot of time talking about the transfers.
Freddie Buckets.
Yes. And it's not Buckets. Freddie Buckets. I mean, it's Cameron Carr, who is a top 50 player for us at 24/7. He is a natural bucket getter at the shooting guard position, and you pair him with Fred, and we'll see if, basketball is a little bit different than football. You can make more of an immediate impact on the basketball court, but that's still, especially at a place like Tennessee with how demanding Rick is, it's hard to impact games right away. But they have Cameron Carr, who can shoot the ball. Freddie DeLeon can shoot the ball. JP Estrella, the big man.
I'm excited about JP.
Yeah, Tennessee held off Duke to get him late in his process, and even Iowa. And I know Iowa basketball is Iowa basketball, but it's a solid program.
They produce some dudes, though.
And some big men, too. Remember, they just had Luka Garza, whatever his name was, and JP Estrella he's a bucket getter as well. So that's 3. And, you have Cade Phillips coming in. I don't think he'll be a contributor this year. I think he's more of a developmental guy, just high upside, ton of athleticism, but needs some time in the weight room with Garrett Medenwall. But he is a guy who is athletic enough to be an impact player at some point. So like you could, like you were saying in Rick's comments at the Big Orange Caravan stops, he said another reason for Tennessee fans to be excited in terms of his view on the roster situation. Like he recognized that they need to shoot the basketball better and that they need more athleticism as well. And everybody wants to blame like the Rick Barnes system, but I don't think it's the system. They're getting shots. Where I criticize Rick. Shots. Yes, where I criticize Rick is the personnel. Like I'm not saying that Rick Barnes and his coaching staff doesn't deserve any criticism because that's not how sports or any profession works. But I think the criticism is misplaced. Not that he runs a flawless system or something like that, but he runs a really good system that produces open shots. I just don't think that some of the guys that they took the last couple of years worked out the way that they thought they were going to work out. Agreed. And that led to a personnel issue. And look, even with those issues, they were still a Sweet 16 team. And I know it's wild, but the Josiah, Olivier, Santi core group of guys, they won as much as the Grant and Admiral teams. I'm just saying, like they won the SEC tournament, something Grant and Admiral couldn't do. And Grant and Admiral won the SEC regular season championship, but like they made one Sweet 16. This team made one Sweet 16. That team won the regular season championship. This team won the SEC tournament for the first time in like 43 years. So it's not like they've been bad. It's just expectations have changed, and fans want more in the tournament.
Which is a good problem to have.
Yes, and it's totally fair, too. It's totally fair. It's totally fair to appreciate the regular season and also want more in the tournament. But it sounds like Rick realizes that there needed to be a personnel change, and with the transfers that they brought in, the 3, and they're bringing in 4 freshmen. I know Freddie's technically already on campus, but I really say 3 because, again, I don't think Cade Phillips will impact right away. Maybe I'm completely wrong about that. We'll see. But the 3 transfers and the 3 bucket getters who are freshmen, DeLeon, Carr, and Estrella, like it seems like he thinks that they can help early. And if they do, they're scorers and they're athletic. And that's what he thought that this roster needed to upgrade.
I love it. I love it, man. Great insight there from you, man. Let's hit baseball, man. Let's hit it. What's going on, man? What's the small issues, man? Because I don't think it's any big major problems. I think it's just the little things that are hurting them, and it's a lot better now than it was at the beginning of the season, which you got to give Tony credit for, because this team could have cashed it in and be like, man, whatever, bro. We just going to reset next year. I mean, and think about it. It is hard. It's very, very hard to play a season after your team last year was literally the best team historically to ever play college baseball. Even though they didn't win, didn't go to Omaha and didn't win, there's no doubt about it that last year's team was the best baseball team that's ever played college baseball. And you fell short, and you're living on the expectations of last year. Tony said it off the get-go. When they were ranked number 2, he was like, we're overrated. We're ranked this high because of last year's team, but we need to pump the brakes. He said it. He warned everyone before the season even started, and everyone's still freaking out and going crazy, man. But baseball is baseball. What happened last year is not realistic to ever happen again. It's just not a thing in baseball. It's just not. What's the problem? What's going on, man? What's going on?
Well, early in the season, it was fielding issues. The outfield defense was poor. The infield defense was poor. Base running mistakes were happening left and right. Man. The pitching has been fine all season long. The bullpen has been great all season long for the most part, outside of games here and there. But that's baseball. The bullpen is the bullpen. It's not going to be perfect every single game. That's why baseball is such a humbling sport. The best players go 3 for 10, and they end up in the Hall of Fame. You go 3 for 10 at on the football field, and you're never playing. You go 3 for 10 on the basketball court, and you're Dylan Brooks. So, it was just.
Did he really hit 3 shots? Oh, my bad.
That's a good point. It was more like no, he does, but it's with the 20 attempts and not the 10 attempts.
There you go.
But there was just a lot going wrong. They just weren't a good fundamental baseball team, and part of that was, I think the pitching issue was guys not pitching to their ability, but since Tony and Frank Anderson have changed up the rotation and the roles, I think the pitching staff has been much better. You've had a couple outings here and there, but I do think that's more baseball than anything.
Yeah,
yep, it's part of the game. The games. I just watched Garrett Cole yesterday, arguably the best pitcher in baseball, top 5 pitcher. I mean, got killed for 6 runs. So
got touched.
Got touched. Like it happened.
Yeah.
It, absolutely. But the pitching has been much more like it was supposed to be since Tony made those pitching changes. And the outfield defense, since they put Christian Scott in right field and Hunter Inslee in center.
Shout out to Christian Scott, man. My God,
both of them, man. They're. I mean, you look at the SEC numbers, and I don't have it right in front of me, but Jared Dickey is by far the best hitter statistically. He's hitting like 361 in SEC play. And then number 2 is Hunter Inslee. Number 3 is Christian Scott. And number 4, I think this will surprise people, is Maui Ahuna. Like, those have been your 4 best hitters in SEC play. Maui, Inslee, Scott, and Dickey. And Inslee and Scott were kind of afterthoughts at the beginning of the season. I did not expect Hunter Inslee and Christian Scott to be everyday starters by the time April and May rolled around. And I was out there in the fall after football media and in between football practice watching fall scrimmages. And even then I knew that Christian Scott I thought Christian Scott would be the 4th outfielder because he's great defensively and kind of fill in here and there. And then Hunter Inslee, I thought, was a depth piece as well, but because of their defense and they're just steady Eddie at the plate, they're not going to hit a bunch of home runs or do a lot, but they're going to make pitchers.
ABs.
That's right, the name of the game. And they're going to draw a lot of pitches. They're going to make pitchers work, and they're going to reach base. Singles.
No one is better at going down 0-2 and then getting a full count out of nowhere than Christian Scott. I don't care what no one says. That man goes down 0-2 almost every AB, and somehow he either finds a hit or makes the count full and gets a walk, man. The guy's good, man. Like, it's year 5, so he should have it figured out by now. And for 2, man, like, sometimes it just takes other players a little bit longer to figure it out, and he has it figured out. And you just can't not have him on defense. You can sacrifice a little bit of offense for defense in baseball. You kind of have to, but his bat's coming around. He doesn't have to do a whole lot. He has to do just enough, which is what he's doing. And he has some really, really good swings that just don't go his way. I mean, he's a couple swings away from 4 or 5 more home runs, man. I'm talking about balls literally at the warning track, man. Like, hey, shout out to him, man, because he could have gave up, but he's still going. I love it.
He could have. And Tony Vitello and this coaching staff has always been high on Christian Scott. Because Christian Scott is an awesome dude. I talked about that earlier. He's the type of guy that you want your daughter to date. He really is. He's an awesome young man. And he's always had a little bit of natural ability. They've always been high on him since he got to Tennessee. He's from Clarksville, Tennessee, which is funny because Tennessee plays Austin Peay from Clarksville on Tuesday night. That's kind of a hometown game that he has every single year.
Circle.
You got to remember, like, he's been behind Jordan Beck and Drew Gilbert these past couple of years. And he was a developmental guy, like you talked about. And I talked earlier about him not being the most vocal type of leader. So he's had to find confidence in himself, and that's starting to come out. So he's a great story. And I talked earlier about the Twitter and how negative it can be and emotionally draining. I appreciate your view on Christian Scott because there are some on social media and the message boards who do not understand how good of a baseball player Christian Scott is. And I hate to pull this card, but like you don't know baseball if you think Christian Scott should not be in the lineup. It's that simple. If you think Scott should not be in the lineup, you do not know baseball. Like, I hate to be that butthole who pulls the you don't know the sport card, but like, you literally don't.
But it's the truth. You can't sit here. You see the problem with this fan base is they glorify Tony V. Glorify him. Tony V literally walks on water in the state of Tennessee, literally. But God forbid he has Christian Scott in the outfield. God for freaking bid. It's like, bro, how can you call this man a really, really good coach and then question every single thing that he does? Those two, the correlation is not there. It's not.
Right. You're right. And that's kind of the thing with Rick Barnes as well. Rick Barnes is a great basketball coach. Who has run into trouble in the NCAA tournament because the NCAA tournament is very, very hard, harder than people want to admit. It's almost as if they know what they're doing. And I mean, expectations change, and that's not to say that Tony doesn't make mistakes. He does, and he's typically the first one to admit it to the media. But Christian Scott and Hunter Inslee as well changed Tennessee's season because it improved the outfield defense that was terrible to start the season. And also their bats in the lineup in the 2-hole and in the 9-hole have just been really steady presences. So that's changed. Jared Dickey in left field and Cal Stark behind the plate. I know people kind of wonder.
Swinging Stark. I don't care what nobody say. Stark, if you somehow hear this, Cal Stark, keep swinging that bat because, boy, when you hit the ball, you hit it hard, man. Keep swinging that, man. I don't care what nobody say about him, man.
He's a better hitter than his numbers indicate, and I feel like he's trying to find – he's a confident guy, but in terms of – there's a different level of confidence when you know you're going to be in the starting lineup every single day. I think there's a little bit of looking over the shoulder type of thing, but – he catches, and I know this is a weird dynamic for Tennessee fans, and they don't really understand why. Jared Dickey, they put him in left field because they feel like it's easier on him for his body, less wear and tear, because he is a guy that's been banged up the last couple of years. I don't want to call him injury prone, but it seems like he's been dealing with quite a bit in a short amount of time. So they feel like him not catching helps with the wear and tear. And then Cal Stark, they love the energy that he brings behind the plate. They do. They think
you
that
always see him.
Always.
Show him the pictures. Hey, good pitch. Good pitch.
That's what they love about him. They love the camaraderie. They love the energy. Kind of he kind of has a little bit of Drew Gilbert in him, like that FU that this team kind of needs. So that's helped. And again, it's not Yadier Molina back there. Tennessee's been screwed by the draft the last couple of years. Yeah. Pavelloni gets drafted, which they expected, and then they thought Ryan Miller was going to be the next guy, but it hasn't worked out defensively with Ryan Miller.
And guy from West Virginia just up and quit out of nowhere.
Yep, they got a big transfer from West Virginia who was going to be the catcher last season on last year's great team. Evan Russell did a phenomenal job.
It worked out. It worked out.
It did work out, but it just kind of goes to it's been a circus at the catcher's position, and not really anybody's fault. It's just been bad luck. That West Virginia transfer decided he wanted to go join a fraternity in the fall. You go out and you do replace Connor Pavelloni after Omaha, and then your replacement decides that he doesn't want to play baseball anymore in the fall once you get him on campus. Like you can't blame anybody for that. And then Evan Russell did a great job filling in. And then this past offseason, after Evan graduates, they go out and get Jack Alexander from Austin Peay, who a really solid catcher, can swing it a little bit, good defensively, older guy. And out of nowhere, he stunned Tennessee and signed an undrafted deal with the Royals. That came out of nowhere. I mean, Tennessee can't do anything about that. And there's been like 2 or 3 other transfers that Tennessee thought that they were going to get at catcher. I don't know about 3. There's been 1 for sure that they thought that they were going to get, and this is actually pre-Jack Alexander, a catcher within the SEC that they thought that they were going to get, and he unexpectedly signed an undrafted free agent deal as well. And so now you're stuck with, okay, do we put Jared Dickey back there? Charlie Taylor's bat isn't quite good enough yet. Ryan Miller isn't quite good enough defensively. Cal Stark is kind of best of both worlds, and now they've realized that he has the energy and whatnot to play back there. So a lot of reasons. I mean, it was just a bad baseball team. Didn't do things fundamentally well at the beginning of the year. Speaking to this weekend, losing to Georgia specifically, I honestly don't feel that bad about them coming out of the weekend. I know the road record is atrocious, 2-11. It is atrocious, don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. I just feel like this weekend was different than some of the other series earlier in the year. Like when they lose to Arkansas on the road, or lose to Missouri on the road, or got swept by, or not swept, but lost 2 or 3 to Florida at home. Like, you walk away from those weekends and feel like, oh my gosh, so much is wrong with this baseball team. That's what it felt like earlier in the year. And I don't feel like that coming off of this Georgia series. And we'll see in hindsight how they perform against Kentucky this week, which will be a really tough matchup. Kentucky's really good. And then South Carolina's banged up, but that'll still be a tough road trip next weekend.
They got the best hitter in the country as a true freshman on their team. Good God.
Well, Dylan Cruz is the best hitter in the country at LSU.
You're right. I'm sorry. Second best. My bad.
Yes, Ethan Petrie, I believe is his last name, is the second best. No doubt about that. He's going to be a handful to deal with, but we'll see how they end up. But I kind of look at this weekend, and you look at the loss on Saturday. They lose 3-1, and I thought the umpire was not good whatsoever in that baseball game. Not good both ways, but it felt like Tennessee was getting more of the short end of the stick than not. And I'm not being the guy on social media complaining about the refs. Like, there was statistical data, like Georgia's TrackMan system that tracks the pitches and shows where it is in the zone. They were balls. Like, they were literally balls. This isn't me being the guy on social media complaining about the refs and the umpires. Like, there's statistical proof that the umpire was wrong, and more often than not, it was Tennessee. And I don't think Tennessee handled that well, which is a separate issue. But I think that kind of got them out of their groove. So you lose kind of for that reason. And also, you hit the ball well. You just hit it right at guys all afternoon. So
that's just unfortunate.
Right. That Saturday loss was baseball being baseball.
Yeah.
And then on Sunday, the score looks uglier than what I think the game actually was. They swung the ball well. They scored 4 runs early. And then that 5th inning threw them out of whack. And even after that 5th inning, like, they were still hitting the ball well, just still kind of right at guys, which is baseball being baseball and bad luck. And so I just kind of think that this boiled down to bad luck on Saturday, baseball being baseball. And then on Sunday, like, Drew Beam didn't have his best stuff. But if Christian Moore fields those 2 routine ground balls, it's a 5-4 baseball game after 5 innings. So, like, that's kind of what it boils down to simplistically. And I realize I'm being super simplistic, but I like, it was just those 2 things. And really the issue was the defense in that 5th inning that cost them the series. So I walk away with one issue out of the weekend. There's little things here and there. Like, Blake Burke needs to pick it up. Drew Beam was kind of so-so. Chase Burns wasn't healthy enough to pitch, apparently. Like, there's other things
I was wondering about
that go into
because
it.
I was like,
I didn't have as big of a problem with Tony not going to somebody else because Drew Beam had just got a double play and a strikeout to end the inning in the 4th. And then in the 5th, he starts with a ground ball, and Christian Moore boots it. Should have been an out. He leaves the slider up over the plate to Charlie Condon, and Condon hit it a mile. But then he comes back with a ground ball for the first out. Should have been the second out. And then he got another ground ball that should have been the third out. But Christian Moore didn't make that play either. So, like, after the Condon home run, I probably would have gone to A.J. Russell, especially since Chase Burns was not available. But if Christian Moore, and I really don't mean to put it all on Christian Moore, but if he fields those 2 balls, I think the game may go a different way. So, like, I leave kind of thinking, like, that was the issue, whereas earlier in the season, there were a ton of issues. And we'll see if I'm being too overly optimistic based off of how they play these next couple of weekends. But that's my simplistic view of things. I don't think it's as bad as it seems. Georgia's an NCAA tournament team. They don't have a ton of talent, but the talent that they do have, especially in their lineup, is really good and made Tennessee pay all weekend long. So I feel good about Tennessee coming out of the weekend, although social media would tell you otherwise.
My only problem, literally my only problem with this baseball team is I think we are the worst 0-2 pitching staff in the country. We got the best pitchers in the country, but for some reason, every single time that one of the pitchers is up 0-2, they throw one right over the plate, and it's smacked every time. And I'm like, what are we doing? Like, that's the only thing that bothers me more than everything else. Whatever. That's a part of the game. It happens. It's baseball. But these 0-2 pitches bother me more than anything. I don't know if that's like, I don't know if that's the pitcher calling their own pitch. I don't know.
They're not purposely throwing it over the middle of the plate. I can. They're not saying that you're saying that, but like Drew Beam isn't throwing an 0-2 slider over the heart of the plate at the letters. He's just not. It's just a lack of execution is what it is. You want to throw a slider most situations in that situation. Try to get them to chase something out of the zone. But that's been the problem with Tennessee's pitching staff is a lack of command. Yeah. And you're really seeing it in those situations where Dolander leaves a fastball over the middle of the plate when it looks like he's just grooving a fastball, but I promise you that's not what he's doing. He may be going fastball up and away. He may be going fastball up and in. He's trying to throw a fastball, but not over the plate. He's trying to get him the chase or the slider. And like that was the issue with Chase Burns. He could not locate his slider to start the season. And since he's gone to the bullpen and he's working out of the stretch instead of the windup, his slider's been on point. So that's been the issue. Is it's not, and I'm not saying that you think this, but they're not purposely throwing those pitches over the middle of the plate. It's very frustrating, and that's walks and bad 0-2 pitches are the things that will drive a pitching coach crazy. I mean, 0-2 hits, home runs, whatever. Having a guy down 0-2 and not being able to put him away will drive a pitching coach crazy. And that's something Tennessee has struggled to do this season, but it's the overarching theme of struggling with command. Dolander, Beam, Burns, when those guys have struggled, Halverson, Sewell, they've struggled with command and they're leaving pitches over the middle of the plate. My biggest concern about this team is what I talked about a little bit earlier. I don't think there's a leadership issue. I don't think there's a culture issue. I just don't know that the leadership is good enough to handle. Like the umpire was bad on Saturday, and they did not handle that well. They don't handle losing in a good way. They really dwell on it. They're not mature. Your key players in the middle of the lineup are younger guys, and I don't think that they know how to handle success or handle failures just yet. So you kind of look at the roster, and there are veterans. We talked about this earlier. There are veterans technically, but like Jared Dickey, first year as a full-time starter. Blake Burke, sophomore. Christian Moore, sophomore. Maui Ahuna, transfer. Zane Denton, transfer. Griffin Merritt, transfer. Christian Scott, first year as a full-time starter. Hunter Inslee, first year as a full-time starter. Cal Stark, JUCO guy. Chase Dolander's been here. This is his second year, but a transfer. Chase Burns, Drew Beam, sophomores. Seth Halverson, second year here, but a transfer. Andrew Lindsay, transfer. Like, again, there's not a culture or a leadership issue. It's just not what you've had the last 2 years because they're not guys that Tony recruited and brought up and developed. It's kind of like bringing a bunch of guys together or throwing paint on the wall and hoping that it sticks. And that's one of the reasons they've gotten better is because that has gotten better over the course of the season. Definitely. But I still don't think it's where it needs to be. They don't handle failures well. They don't handle Georgia hitting 2 home runs in the same inning to take an 8-4 lead. And, like, that's only 4 runs and a ton of baseball left, and they seem kind of shell-shocked when that happens. So that's my biggest concern is that they don't – like you saw it with the Evan Russells and Gilbert and Beck and even going back further, Pavoloni, Hundley, Rucker, Ferguson, Spence, and I'm leaving off a ton of guys, but all those guys, like if they had a bad moment, made a mistake, they flushed it immediately and went on to the next play. And I don't think these guys do it because they're young or they're in positions to where like they haven't been around long enough to where they can necessarily stick their neck out there and know that their voice is going to be heard.
On top of that, a lot of people seem to forget that last year's team pissed every team off in the country. Every single baseball team last year hated Tennessee. And so with all those players gone, these teams are now like, okay, we finna get you back now because you ain't got these same players no more. You ain't got Drew Gilbert no more. You ain't got Jordan Beck no more. You don't have those players no more. So watch this. And they're just taking it. I mean, this is when I knew that I'm not going to say that they're soft, but this is when I knew that they were just taking it and they didn't know what to do. That Florida series told me everything I need to know. Florida was chirping the entire series. They were saying, we finna kick your ass and you ain't going to do nothing about it. And they didn't do anything about it until game 3. And watching that series, I was like, okay. I was like, this team is really paying for everything that last year's team did. Everything.
Yeah, last year's team wrote checks that this team was not prepared to cash, and we'll see what
on a Sunday where they like to just blow teams out, which is crazy to me. But neither here nor there.
Yeah, that's it. We'll see what the roster
looks like. They literally
look
like the best team in the country for a couple weeks in a row on game 3. Literally, it's like
they did.
Where's this been? Like, what's going on? Like,
and then they turned the corner and swept Vandy and swept Mississippi State. So you hope that's more of what they actually are than what they were at the beginning. I don't know how far they'll make it. It kind of feels like basketball all over again to me. Like, they have the potential and the talent, and they're good enough to make a run in the tournament. But like, people aren't talking enough about the defense to me. Like, everybody wants to talk about the pitching, the hitting, this guy, that guy. The problem is the defense has been absolutely atrocious. You can say what you want about the pitching, but if guys are making good pitches and the balls are getting booted behind them and guys are still getting on base, that puts even more pressure on your pitcher to now work out of a jam. So I think that's the biggest issue and will probably ultimately be their downfall, is the defense and the lack of execution of small details. They've limited the number of mistakes, but there's still that one mistake here or there. So we'll see how they respond. These next 2 weekends will be very telling. I think if they have success these next 2 weekends, then they really did turn a corner with Vandy and Mississippi State. And if they struggle against Kentucky and South Carolina, then I think it's going to tell you that was probably just a hot streak for them.
Yeah, and I'll finish with this, and we'll close out with Tennessee football. I think what's going to happen to Tennessee is I think they're going to go to a regional that they're not supposed to be at, that they're better at, that they shouldn't be. And I think they're going to mess around and win and maybe make a run, because I personally feel like the committee is going to put Tennessee somewhere where they shouldn't be, where they're better than, just because, they didn't do what they did last year, and they're going to mess around and win. That's what I think is going to happen. They're going to feel disrespected. I'm like, okay, you're going to bring us here? And, okay, all right, bet. And I think they can do it. I don't know if they win a super regional, but I do think whatever regional they go to, I think they can win it, because I think they'll be somewhere where they probably shouldn't be. They should probably be in a better regional, but I think they'll go to a pretty crappy one, in my opinion. That's just what I think.
I think you're on to something there. I would just not to just completely say the same thing that you just did, because I agree with everything you just said. I think the thing that should give Tennessee fans hope is that more likely than not, they're not going to be playing an SEC team. And like, I don't think not that Tennessee needs to duck SEC teams, because look, we've seen them beat LSU, we've seen them beat Florida, we've seen them beat
the brakes off of them.
Vandy, Mississippi State. Yeah. I know they got swept by Arkansas, but they made a lot of self-inflicted mistakes in those first 2 games of that series. I think Missouri, cold beginning of SEC play, like, that was more about the circumstances than anything else. Like, and they swept A&M, and A&M's playing really good right now. Missouri's
not playing good at all right now.
No,
man, that guy hit 4 home runs in one game on them at Missouri.
Yeah, and Ole Miss is bad. Shout out to Calvin Harris, who has a phenomenal name. But my point is, like, I don't think people – it's kind of like what I said earlier about the NCAA tournament and Rick Barnes. People don't realize how hard the NCAA tournament is and how much actual luck goes into it. Yeah. It's kind of the same with SEC baseball. Like, I don't think people realize – people who have been following SEC baseball for a long time understand – and I realize there's a lot of new people in Tennessee's fan base that have begun following SEC baseball and Tennessee baseball. So they're kind of still learning the ins and outs. And I don't say that to minimize anybody's knowledge, but I don't think people realize just how much SEC teams beat up on each other. Yep. All you have to do is look at the last 2 national championships, Mississippi State and Ole Miss. And neither one of those teams were all that great during conference play leading up to the years that they won national championships.
Like Mississippi State got bounced real early in the SEC tournament.
Tennessee bounced them in that SEC tournament. And last year,
one rule, I think.
After Tennessee got screwed by the umpires against Alabama, or as I recall, Bummy McBumface, as I called him on the Swain event the next morning. But like, Ole Miss last year was literally the last team to make the NCAA tournament. They were going to fire their coach. They were going to fire their coach. Literally going to fire their coach. Yep. And they won a national championship. So I think that should give Tennessee fans hope. It doesn't mean that Tennessee's going to make it to Omaha just because they're not playing SEC teams anymore. But SEC baseball is different. And I had somebody send a stat to me earlier, one of my buddies, about SEC baseball. And it was the SEC versus the rest of college baseball. And I'm looking at it here. But the SEC versus the rest of college baseball this year has won 81% of the games. The SEC against the rest of the country is 267-61.
Jeez.
267 and 61. So
that's an unreal number.
Year in, year out, you see these kind of teams in SEC play that you think are just kind of average, and they get into the tournament against teams who are not in the SEC, and next thing you know, they're in a super regional or in Omaha. I mean, last year, look at what Auburn did. They make it to Omaha. A&M, all these teams, like I think that should excite Tennessee fans is that they won't be playing. I mean, I guess because so many SEC teams make the tournament, that one could be in the regional, and just because they're not playing SEC teams doesn't mean that they're going to make it to Omaha or something. Like you're still playing good baseball teams in the tournament. There's still good baseball outside of the SEC, but the SEC really prepares you for the NCAA tournament.
It does. And you run into pitching that's not that great.
Correct.
That's really what it boils down to, because every single night in the SEC, you're going to see a pitcher throwing high 90s, fastballs right down the middle. I'm going to dare you to hit it. You can't. Goodbye. That's what
it's not even just that. It's these teams outside of the SEC. I mean, you may have a team here or there, but these teams do not have anywhere near the number of pitchers that SEC teams typically have. And look, even Tennessee has a distinct advantage on everybody in the SEC. They have more pitching than LSU, Florida, Arkansas. And some of this is because of injuries, but South Carolina, like all these teams that are perceived as the best teams in the league, and rightfully so, they are better than Tennessee. But in a tournament setting, I'd rather have Tennessee's pitching staff.
Tennessee going to go all the way to the end, because they literally have, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Off the top of my head, I can say they have 6 Friday night starters. Off the top of their head, including their 3 already. But they have 3 pitchers in the bullpen that I believe are Friday night starters.
Yep. Now, the problem is you don't trust the defense. No, you don't. Like, Tennessee has a significant advantage with its pitching staff, assuming they pitch to their capabilities. The problem is you don't know if the guys behind them are going to make the plays, and you don't know if the offense is going to go ice cold. So we'll see what happens, but there's plenty of reason for optimism of Tennessee making a run here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, man. Can't wait, man. Hey, let's hit some Tennessee football to close it out, man, and we'll call it a day. Supposed to be a good month for Tennessee this month. That's what the word floating around is, that the month of May will be very kind to the University of Tennessee. We shall see how that goes. I think this 24 class is set up to be a top 10 class. I'm not going to say top 5, but I do think that this can be a top 10 class. Could possibly top 5 if you land some of the big fish that you're after. Realistically, you're probably going to get maybe 1 or 2 out of those 8 or 9 that you're in it deep for, but if you get 1 or 2 out of 8, 4 years in a row, I think you're doing a pretty doggone good job, because Tennessee's now winning recruiting battles against Alabama and Georgia that 2 years ago, there's no way in hell Tennessee even has a chance to talk to a kid that's, has an offer from Alabama or Georgia, man. So kudos to Josh Heupel for coming in, man, and changing the culture immediately. Year 2, should have went to the playoffs, but year 2, you come in, you got a Heisman candidate quarterback, should have been invited to New York. You got a prolific offense. The defense took, I'm not going to say a major step, but they took a big step. But I do think that this next year coming up, now that they're more athletic, they have, a little bit more depth back there in the secondary. I think this year 3 could be a surprise for other teams in the SEC. I think I won't say teams are sleeping on Tennessee, but I also think that teams are like, I'm going to have to see it to believe it. This was year 2. Let me see if you can do it again. But I think that they are set up pretty well to have a really, really good season next year. And I think they can build and get, to Atlanta and get to the playoffs. I think they can. The defense is the only thing that really worries me. But like I said, they're more athletic. They got more depth, getting a little bit older. Let's see how it goes, man. I'm excited, though. I'm excited. I can't wait to see, what they do, man. I think hype is really going to open some eyes this next year coming up. If Joe Milton figures it out, I don't see Tennessee losing a game. If Joe Milton plays to his potential and his ability, I do not see Tennessee losing a game. I am not saying that just because I'm a Tennessee fan. It's the God honest truth. There is not a quarterback in the country that has more talent than Joe Milton right now, in my opinion. There's just not. If he can figure it out and put it all together, I don't see them losing. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, if Joe Milton, if it all clicks for him, which has always been the conversation, he's always had the natural ability. If it finally clicks for him, they will replicate last year's success more likely than not. And the reason I say more likely than not is because I do think that maybe his surrounding cast isn't as good as it was for Hendon. And it doesn't matter how good Joe Milton is if the tackle positions are not figured out. Like they've got to figure that out this offseason, whether it's John Campbell or J.J. Crawford, Gerald Mincey. Somebody's got to step up and grab the bull by the horns and take over those tackle positions because, Hendon Hooker was special as special gets. But he was also able to be special because Darnell Wright was locking down the right side of that offensive line. Now, Tennessee was still able to have the best offense in the country with patchwork at the left tackle spot. So maybe the system helps Tennessee there, but Darnell Wright was the number 10 overall pick in the draft for a reason, and that's
Absolutely.
because he was shutting down prolific edge rusher after prolific edge rusher. So I do think guys around Joe are also going to need to step up. Can Brew McCoy elevate his game, which I think he can. I think the big thing for him is he's got to stay healthy, but he could also kind of not hide, but kind of was behind Cedric Tillman and behind Jalen Hyatt. Everybody was talking about them. So now that everybody's talking about Brew McCoy, how does he handle that? Can Dante Thornton step in right away and be a big impact player? I think he's certainly capable of it, but he's got to go prove it. I think Ramel Keaton's going to have a really good year. I think he's somebody
reliable, man.
Right, at 1,000%. Just reliable.
Everyone wrote him off, and all he does every single time is shut you up. That's what he does.
Yeah, and look, I was one of the people that wrote him off. Now he's the one that gave the ammunition to be written off, coming out of high school as highly ranked as he was, and not producing to the level that he should have been. Like he brought that on himself, in my opinion. But he certainly changed the narrative last year. Just really solid. But they need him to go from being a guy that can fill in to being one of the go-to guys in a sense. Not the go-to guy, but to be a legitimate starter at this level. And I think that he can. So there's a lot of question marks. I think the offense has a lot of potential. And how those questions that I just posed, how is this finally the year that it clicks for Joe Milton?
Yeah.
Does Tennessee sort out the tackle positions in a good manner? Do those receivers live up to their potential? If those questions are yes, then I agree. I think it's going to be really hard to knock off Tennessee. I don't think that you can pick against Georgia at this point just because, unfortunately for Tennessee fans, they are a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
But even Georgia has some question marks. Like who's going to fill in for quarterback for them? I know they were talented guys coming out of high school, but that doesn't mean anything. Joe Milton was a talented guy coming out of high school and a highly ranked guy, and it's taken him several years to piece it together. So those Georgia quarterbacks are going to have to finally
they
produce.
Had a walk-on in front of them, man, and that's no offense to Stetson Bennett at all. But at the end of the day, he was still a walk-on, man, and a walk-on beat out 3 5-stars. 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 5-stars. And
Kirby gave him the opportunity. There wasn't a quarterback battle this past year, but leading up until their first national championship, they had every opportunity in the book to take the job and run with it, and they weren't able to. So, look, I'm still picking Georgia to win the East and probably win the SEC, but there are question marks there that, like, if they don't play out well in Georgia's favor, then Tennessee could take advantage. So I think ultimately it'll come down to those questions on offense, and I think the defense is going to be better, but is it going to be better to where it can withstand, say the offense takes a minor step back? Because I don't think the offense isn't going to be bad. It's going to be good at minimum, but if it's good, not great, is the defense going to take a big enough step forward to where it makes up for the difference? And I don't know. I think the defense is in a great place right now. I think there's a lot of depth. I think there's a lot of talent, but I think it's a lot of young talent and young depth. Are they ready to piece it all together this season? I don't know. I think I'm really excited about the 2024 defense when these guys that are freshmen and sophomore now, when they're juniors and sophomores, that defense has the potential to be scary, especially with the way Tennessee continues to recruit, and I'm sure they'll hit the portal as well. Like that defense is going to be real fun to watch, and
Absolutely.
And not to get too far out in front of ourselves, but Nico Iamaleava as a sophomore, assuming he develops the way that he should, like that could be a really fun team. So I think at minimum, this is a good football team.
Definitely.
The question is, how do all those questions I posed, how do they play out? And that will determine how good. They'll be good, but how good?
I think it boils down to, well, one of the things is you have to keep it personal. I think the reason Tennessee has such a great season is, one, Hendon Hooker brought a culture to that locker room that is going to be hard to replicate. He worked all day, every day. He left the complex every night, no earlier than 10 o'clock. You know what I mean? Can Joe replicate that, for one? And for two, they made it personal last year. Everyone just wrote Tennessee off. Oh, Tennessee ain't going to be this. They're going to win 7 games. Whoop, this, that, and the third. And they took it personal, and they came out and performed. Can they do it again? Can you keep it personal? And that's one of the reasons why I think they beat Alabama. Like, I think that's where Alabama kind of, I'm not going to say Alabama came in to Knoxville sleepwalking, but I think they came in expecting, like, it's Tennessee, we're going to beat them. And it was a personal game for them. Henry Toll was on the opposite side, and them boys said, we're not losing tonight. And if they can keep that mindset, keep putting in the work that they put in, man, the sky's the limit for this team, man. I'm just excited to see it. I can't wait, man, because it's been a long time since it's been this exciting to watch Tennessee football. And I think the expectations are fair. I hope people don't expect 15-0 national championship this next year coming up. It's possible. Yes, the expectation is there, but I don't know if that's super realistic. But I will finish it with this. I think right now is the perfect time to chase Georgia and to chase Alabama. Why? Because they both have question marks at quarterback. When you have question marks at quarterback, you are a team that can be beat. If Alabama don't have it figured out by the third Saturday in October, Tennessee really has a chance to go in there and win that football game. They really do. And the same thing at Georgia. Unfortunately, they're playing Georgia towards the end of the season, so Georgia will probably have it figured out by then. But at the same time, we don't know how it's going to play out. Right now is the perfect time to catch them. Can you do it? Can you do it?
And you don't know how Joe Milton is going to look by the time that Georgia game rolls around, which I guess could be a great thing or a bad thing. We don't know. Maybe it's the Nico Iamaleava show by the time that Georgia game rolls around. I don't think that they have the depth or overall talent that you need to have to go win a national championship. But that doesn't mean that you still can't have a great season. I don't want Tennessee fans to think like Josh Heupel and this program is done building. Like, they haven't arrived yet. Like, they have to a certain extent in terms of people respecting them more. But the goal at Tennessee is just win championships, not Orange Bowls. That was fun. Great. I will always remember last season. I will never forget it. But that's still not the expectations at Tennessee. The expectation is to win championships. And I think people have quickly forgotten, because of how quickly they've had success, just how far of a hole, how big of a hole, how deep it was that Jeremy Pruitt left them in. And to win a championship, I mean, we're talking about a championship, not a division, not an SEC East, an SEC championship or a national championship against the sport's best programs. Like, there's a different level of talent and depth needed, and I think they're on that trajectory. I don't think they're there yet. But again, they can still have a great season. I think the East is getting better, which makes it a little more interesting, a little more difficult. South Carolina is going to be better. Kentucky's always solid under Stoops. You should still probably win those games, but they're not automatic W's, is more of my point. Georgia's going to be difficult. I think Florida's actually going to be really bad. And I think by Vanderbilt will be better, but they're still not a team that should beat Tennessee in Neyland. We'll see what A&M looks like. I think
Tennessee's gonna beat the brakes off of A&M. I
think so too. I would lean in that direction, but I don't think it's a guarantee, because that's still a team that has a lot of talent. And if they can piece it together, then that's going to be a real difficult game. But I agree, it's a game that Tennessee should win, especially with it being in Neyland. So Tennessee, although I don't think they're at the championship level just yet, I think they're kind of where they were last year. They're in a position to compete to go to Atlanta, and then maybe if everything breaks your way, then you're in the playoffs, and we're having a different conversation. Look, I didn't think Tennessee was going to be in the playoff conversation going into Athens last year. I didn't think they were going. No, nobody. I didn't. Yeah, you're right.
There's only one person in the country that did. Ron Harper. That's the only person. That's the name. Ron Harper, right? That's the name. Roman Harper was the only person in the entire country that picked Tennessee to go 11-1. The only person in the entire country.
I thought he was crazy when he did it.
And I did too. Everyone did. I was like, man, come on, man.
I didn't think that they were going to be as good in the trenches on both sides of the ball as they were. And now they have big question marks in terms of replacing guys. So they're going to be good. The question is how good. I think it'll be a fun season. Virginia should be a cakewalk to start the season. I hate to write them off.
They're going to be ready to play because of what happened last
season. Yeah, you're right. But that's
the
also
first quarter will be a little close. But I think after that, Tennessee is going to dog walk them.
Yeah, they should.
I'll see you there, bud.
Well, I will see you there at Nissan Stadium.
I will see you there.
They'll be good. It'll be another fun season. I think it's always going to be fun to watch Josh Heupel teams because he has a great culture and they all love playing for one another and the bigger picture. But also his offensive system is really fun to watch it as well. Obviously, so it'll be
gimmicky. It's just a gimmicky offense, though. So whatever.
Yeah. That's what Kirby Smart and others love to say. So it'll be a fun year. They'll be good. The question is how good.
I'm gonna ask you this last question and we'll end it. So with the gimmicky offense out there in everyone's mind, I just want to ask you this one question, man. If the offense is so gimmicky, how in the world did it put up 52 points against Alabama? The most points that was scored against Alabama since like 1941. Okay, for one. For two, last year, the season before this past season, who scored the most points on Georgia? Who was it? Do you remember who it was?
I think Josh Heupel's offense.
Oh, you don't say, Ben. But it's a gimmicky offense, and you got two of the best defensive coordinators that the game of college football has ever seen, but they putting up hella points on these two teams. But the offense is gimmicky. Well, if the offense is so gimmicky, why Jalen Hyatt have 5 touchdowns against Alabama? If it's so gimmicky. I mean, if you know he's
not wrong.
If you know he's finna run 40 yards right past you, and you can't stop it. I'm just saying, can't be too gimmicky to me. If you know what's coming and you can't stop it, that's not gimmicky. All right, that's just called my guy is better than your guy. Bye-bye, touchdown, see you later. That's what I call it. But gimmick offense, right?
Yeah, and I'll be honest. I mean, I kind of did think it was a gimmick offense for the longest time, but I also don't think. I also don't think that that's a bad thing. Like you look up gimmick in the dictionary, and I'm looking it up real quick. A trick or device intended to attract attention. Sounds like Josh Heupel's offense to me. I mean, they use a trick or device intended to attract attention to the defense. I mean, but the tempo. So that's why I always thought by definition, technically, it's a gimmick offense. But I had that impression when he first got to Tennessee, but being around and covering day to day, week to week, month to month, I realized that it's not just the tempo. Everybody thinks it's just tempo, and a lot of it is, but that's not the only thing. It's actually a really complex system, not as complex as other systems, but all of the players and the different position units are actually being asked to do a ton and just do it very quickly. So I don't get as offended as others do when people say it's a gimmick offense. Because I kind of think it's actually true because it is predicated off a tempo and by the gimmick definition, that's what it is. But I think kind of people just aren't aware of actually how efficient and how complex the Josh Heupel offense is. It's not just tempo. There's a lot else going on. The wide splits, the quarterback having to make a bunch of decisions, in such a short amount of time and getting everybody lined up. Like there's a lot more that goes into it. People think it's an air raid. It's not. They actually love running the football, and the offense is kind of based off of running the football.
Literally, the offense does not go unless they can run the football.
Tennessee struggled. You saw that against Clemson
until.
Yep.
Thank you. Exactly. They struggled against Clemson until what?
Not because of Joe Milton, because they could not run the football.
They couldn't run the ball, but what happened? Jalen Wright broke loose, and the sky opened up, and Tennessee blew the walls off.
1,000%.
This offense is predicated off of running the football first. That is not a gimmicky offense. No, I agree with what you're saying. No, I do. I agree with what you're saying. But an offense that starts off running the ball, you can't call that gimmicky. You just can't.
And they may not run as many plays as other teams and whatnot, but like I kind of hear people say gimmick offense, and I don't think they're totally wrong, but more my thought is they just don't know Josh Heupel's offense. Because if you know Josh Heupel's offense, then you're not saying it's a gimmick offense. I don't think it's unfair to say. I just don't think that should be the first thing mentioned, if that makes sense.
Definitely, I agree, man. I agree. Well, Ben, it's been fun, man. It's been fun. Thank you so much for coming on, giving your insight, giving us basically any and everything that we wanted. Everything I asked, everything I said, you had a point. You had a reason behind it, everything, man. And I really appreciate you for coming on, man. And I know Vol fans going to love this one, man. They're gonna love this one, bro. They're going to love it, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. It was a ton of fun. You and I always are talking about sports in some form or fashion, whether it be while we're playing video games or texting or whatnot. So it's fun to get on a podcast and chop it up and see your ugly mug for a change. So I always appreciate you. Hate I didn't get to meet Zach, but I'm here anytime y'all need me.
Hey, man, next time I'll make sure Zach's able to be here, man, and we can get you both on, man. He's a big Auburn fan, so I'm sure he'll be asking you some questions on, what you think about Auburn and whatnot.
That's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine. I've got family who are diehard Auburn fans, so I know how to handle them.
Perfect, man. Well, Ben, we appreciate you, bro. Guys, thanks for listening. Like, subscribe. Give us feedback, man. Let us know what you want to hear, what you don't want to hear, what you need to hear, whatever, man. We got you, man. Everything here, bro. Appreciate y'all for listening to episode 3. We are out. Get at you next week.